Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today we're looking at 1989's The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. And I am here with Adam Oldman Winters, and I'm Joe Gould.
I can tell you it's a pain to try and Google this film specifically because you keep getting all the other stuff when you just type in Punisher or even Punisher film.
Yeah, and it's another one of those movies that I think probably due to the fact that it's, was it New Line International, is that right? New World Pictures International?
New World Pictures. Yeah, defunct.
They were falling into hard times around the time this movie came out, and I would imagine that a lot of the lack of fun stuff and commentaries and things like that are directly tied to that. It's a shame that they had their financial problems when they did.
I presume the movie itself is in legal limbo as far as who's the distributor of it, because I don't think it's actively streaming legally anywhere or available for digital purchase or any kind of purchase, maybe.
Well, so interesting enough, this is off the Wikipedia page, so take it with a grain of salt. But Live Entertainment has purchased the rights to it in April of '91, and apparently that company is now Lionsgate.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Which might explain, because I think they produced the two reboots, so it's possible that they have the rights to this movie, and it's a crime that they have not put out a new version of this, because it's aged really well, and it is by far, just in my opinion, and I was a Punisher fan growing up, the most true-to-life characterization of Frank Castle's story. And I recognize he's not American, but the way Dolph portrays the character is really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, he doesn't need to say much, and it's okay if he delivers all the lines like he's Ivan Drago, just without some of the sickness of the accent.
Yeah, he's got some good lines too, by the way. This is clever movie. It's a clever movie. And I wouldn't even call this movie a failure. It generally gets called one, but on a $9 million budget, it did make 30 because it was released internationally, and it had the home video release in the U.S. And Dolph, especially at that time period, was pretty popular VHS renter person. Everybody wanted to rent that movie from Blockbuster.
So what months in '89 did this hit theaters?
Let's see here. It released in West Germany on October 5th.
Because this movie makes a Batman reference, and that was bizarre to me because it's 1989 and it wouldn't quite have become pop culture familiarity to just drop Batman references.
No, it was a random reference. I don't know if they were just thinking of a character that people knew. The other shame is that this movie came out in 1989 and not 1992 or 1993. Because that's really in comics when the Punisher became really, really popular, and they gave him like 3 or 4 different books, and he was like arguably the most popular character for a short period of time until he got overused.
He rode high in the early 1990s. I don't remember that many titles for him. I can't say I've ever read a single Punisher book, but you're talking, how comparable is it to Spider-Man and X-Men? Because they were all getting the several titles a week. Stevenson.
I guess this does maybe fall into some of the early popularity. War Journal ran from 88 to 95. You had Punisher Warzone between 92 and 95. You also had a black and white Punisher magazine and the Punisher Armory. There was a ton of one-shots and miniseries. He had a 3 or 4 issue team up with Wolverine. He had a lot. He just as overused as Wolverine.
Marvel has shied away from the Punisher in recent years, right? Because he's the countercultural use of his logo.
Yeah, and it's not even used the right way. It's used by cops to, like, what they're going to do. They're going to be, the cops can be walking around like Punisher. It's not exactly how it goes.
Why do the innocent die while the guilty live?
Yeah, there's a certain portion of the right in this country who kind of really embraced the logo and the idea of a Punisher, probably without ever reading any of the comics, and to kind of ruin the logo for Marvel for a while. I think they'll probably bring it back, but we'll see.
So was it just the logo they wanted to get rid of, like they wrote a story in the comics? Because he doesn't use the logo in this movie. It doesn't show up at all, ironically.
Which makes no sense. It's like, no sense at all. And he looks pretty cool otherwise. He just needs a logo on it. He needs the whole point of the logo too was it would draw the gunfire to his chest. And in the comics he did wear armor.
Yeah, he turns it down at one point.
Now I think I've lost his name. The guy who did the more R-rated comics, Garth Ennis. I think his guy did more have just a general T-shirt, but it's a very realistic thing. It's like it makes no sense why you wouldn't want to use that your advantage in marketing, if nothing else.
Yeah, they use the logo in the poster. I'm not sure. I said the logo, the font, where it's more comic book, but I don't know if that appears in the movie.
I'm not sure. And they do use the skull on his little swords that he makes. I'm not sure what kind of distributor he has.
Yeah, daggers, right. For a guy who lives in the sewer, how does he fashion his own custom knives?
I don't know. Maybe he makes them himself.
He takes a rat skull, and he puts the rat skull on the hilt of the blade. There you go.
Yeah, they also don't say how he finances his operation.
I'm sure he steals a little bit, even though that'd be kind of morally awkward for him if he's talking about the guilty.
So are you familiar with the character Microchip in the comics?
No, I don't know anybody else in Punisher lore. I assume he fights the Kingpin a little bit. That's it.
Yeah, he goes up with the Kingpin. Now, I was going to say, the reason why it's hard to maintain 4 or 5 volumes of Punisher every month is because he has no superpowers. His whole gimmick is that he kills the villain at the end of the comic. So you basically get a crime comic. But for purposes of variety, it's hard to keep that up 4 times a month. So Microchip was a character in the comic who would kind of help him, and he was a tech guy. And the equivalent character in this movie would have been Shakes, who is nothing like that.
The rhyming poet? The bum?
Thespian.
Thespian
so
bum.
They serve a similar role in terms of being his informant.
Well, that other guy probably made it into the Spider-Man animated show. His computer guy he talks to. Probably.
Well, it's been long enough I can't recall, but yeah. What'd you think of old Shakes?
I don't remember his name being mentioned in the movie. I had to view the credits, and even then I wasn't sure who was Shakes and who was these other people.
I'm sorry, Shake, not Shakes. I said that wrong.
Regular Shake, singular.
Yeah, because they take it, I'm sure they take it from Shakespeare and the Shakes.
From his, that makes sense. Yeah, that's
alcohol
clever.
Dependency.
That's so clever, I'm shocked it doesn't come from the comics.
I should say this. I don't think it's from the comics. He definitely didn't have a lackey. There's some good quotes, though. What was that one you started saying?
Give me the prompt on that, how I started it.
Justice. Had to do with justice.
Well, it was when at when we get his sewer lair, we get the shot of him naked from the back, and then he's talking to God, and he's like, God, can you hear me? Why do the innocent die and the guilty live? Why will you not send punishment? Or perhaps you've already answered and you've sent me. How much does that get into the mental state of Frank Castle as relates to the comics? Just how unstable is he mentally?
I'm sure it's been writer specific.
Mm-hmm. In 89, then.
Back when I remember it, he was, I don't know if he was devout's the right word, but I believe he was a Catholic. So he did believe in God, but then he has the tragic thing happen, and I think the characterization of this movie is probably pretty close. I think Dolph looks a little bit more unhinged, but that might just be the bags under his eyes, which he has in every movie. So it's a little tricky on that. But yeah, so there was one quote. I think this is a little bit of a paraphrase. It was, "Why God, why? Where is justice? Where is punishment?" And I think you're blending in some of this. Or have you already answered and told the world, here is justice, here is punishment, in me?
So, he's Marvel Jesus, or he's on a mission from God anyway.
Yeah, original Deadpool. But I think he sees himself as an instrument to bring justice to a world that's devoid of it. And he does have a pretty strict code. Like he will not fight a cop in the comics, even if they're crooked. I don't think he will.
I like the line where Lewitt Gossett, they finally arrested him after he saves the kids. And he says, "What do you call 125 murders in 5 years?" And Frank says, "Work in progress." And then we get a whole lot of F-bombs by Lewis Gossett Jr.
I like it when they had the bad guys that captured the Punisher, and they had him on a stretching machine. And he gets loose and puts them on the stretching machine. And he says, "I don't want to stretch this out, so why don't you just tell me where the kids are?"
Where does he get the red high-heeled shoes for that sequence?
I was confused on that. I wasn't really sure.
I expect there's a lot of this movie that got cut to make it 90 minutes or less. And I know that, too, because I did some research online, but several subplots and they just got consolidated into flashbacks or references, and so it just, there are some things I just wonder, why did that happen? And it's probably explained because it was filmed and just not included in the final cut. So this movie does an interesting thing with the plot, and it, we'll say the main things that drives the last half of this movie are the children of the mobsters getting captured by Lady Tanaka of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. And Shakes goes up to the Punisher and he blames him for it somehow, even though the Punisher is ready to go on vacation, waiting for the mobsters to kill each other. And Shakes tells him, "My God, man, can't you see this is the result of your 5-year killing spree? You've hampered the mobsters to such a degree that they can't protect their own families." I don't know why he felt the need to rhyme that.
There's a lot of rhyming in that scene.
And they're doing this while they're in the sewer, and Frank is about to ride away in his motorcycle to go vacationing in the sewers of Paris or whatever. But that's an interesting moral conundrum for him, because yes, he punishes the guilty so the innocent can live, but here he's got a problem where the innocent children of very guilty mobsters are in danger, and to some degree he's responsible for setting this up.
Yeah, it was an interesting twist of the movie. I can't decide if I like the competing mob bosses for one movie. It seems a little busy.
Oh, definitely. That's a critique I have. So the mob boss they showed in all the trailers is the one that gets killed off first in this movie. Mancini or something, the guy who just gets out of prison, and you're thinking,
Yeah.
this is the big bad here. I think he's even in the top 7 people on the billing, and it's like over, and then you're like, oh, I guess he's not the villain.
But what a great way to introduce the character, though.
It's pretty good montage. I mean, not a but it's a sequence, no doubt.
Yeah, you basically in the first 7 minutes, they set up who the Punisher is, what had happened. The guy gets out who's been blamed for it, and then he gets to his house, and the Punisher goes and kills like everyone in like 5 minutes and blows up the whole house. It's a little unclear whether or not they could tell the Punisher was inside, but
yeah, the media's right outside it because they've followed mob boss Mancini back home, and it looks like they all see Frank Castle right before the explosion happens.
Yeah, they definitely see someone, whether or not they recognize it's him or not, because they were already, I think, trying to decide if the Punisher was dead or something like that.
Frank Castle is dead, right?
Well, they definitely thought Frank Castle's dead.
Berkowitz is supposed to be the only character who publicly insists Frank Castle is alive, and that's causing tension with the media and the mayor and all that.
Well, he takes his role very seriously too, and the film is better for it.
Louis Gossett, oh, he's terrific. He's very accomplished 20th century actor. It's a little bit of a shame that this movie wasn't more highly regarded, because it would add to his resume, I think, as part of the superhero action genre instead of his just more dramatic stuff.
So I missed this. He died in March.
Yeah, and apparently he was left for dead at various times in his life. In the 1990s, he was told he had 6 months to live because it turns out it was a toxic mold poisoning. And then he had cancer in the 2000s. And then he got COVID in 2020. Eventually, I think he just died of heart failure or something like that. That guy wouldn't give up. Just like Berkowitz in this movie. He wouldn't quit. So I don't have as high a praise on his partner, Sam Leary. She just feels like she's in the movie to give his character a sounding board for exposition.
Yeah, I thought it was weak. They never explain. They briefly say that she worked with him on one assignment, like, I forget how many years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. And then
the 5 years, because that's the key thing. 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I guess he used her on an assignment. It wasn't really a partner thing, but they don't explain why she thinks Frank Castle's the Punisher. They don't really explain why she cares so much about him. His reputation would not have been that great in the last 5 years. She's just not that interesting of a personality, and they don't even use her for her looks. Like they don't really use her for anything.
She gets KO'd near the end after she has her scene with Lundgren, and they never reference what happens to her. Again, that's in the more extended cut. But I just thought the original script might have called for her to die there, and they just never mentioned it again.
Yeah.
Did you know Nicole Kidman was originally up for that role?
I heard. I kind of wonder how much of, like, when did New World get their financial problems? Was it at the beginning of production or after it was done?
They filmed it in Australia, which would make sense for Nicole Kidman being there at the time.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm just thinking like they would have had a hard time if you know the studio's in financial distress. I don't know if you're going to sign Nicole Kidman,
who wasn't that big in '89, but still a name, I think.
What do you think of the main mob guy, the real one?
Gianni is the first name, but then the last name is
Franco.
What? Franco. Very Italian mobster. Very Italian. It took me a while for my brain to register that this is going to be the guy who's around till the end while the other ones get killed off. Because that was a little bit hard to keep up with.
Well, I knew the other one's going to get killed off.
And, Lady Tanaka is sort of the big bad, but Franco has the most history with Frank Castle. Franco and Frank, that's a little unfortunate there, but...
Yeah, it is.
They made him up for the movie, right? They didn't pick him from the comics?
I'm not sure.
They could have named him anything then.
Yeah, so he has a plan that he's going to unify all the crime lords into one big happy family.
The 5 families. No more.
500, yeah, by having $500 million in drugs they can share. And
That's a lot of money.
It is. They don't get along real well, and they're quickly attract the attention of the Yakuza.
Yep. Or they pronounce it funny in this movie. The Yakuza.
Yeah.
Yakuza.
And the Yakuzas, the Yakuzis, they come and they want to take over. Well, they want 75% of the cut. I don't think they necessarily want to be too involved, other than just making sure they get paid.
Yep.
And basically say, hey, after all you guys being killed, you're not really in a position to fight us. Shockingly, these mafia people, they're very family-friendly people. And they do like their kids and their successors. Yeah. So just their succession plan, excuse me. So Tanaka takes the step of kidnapping their children, holding them for ransom, with no intention of ever giving them back, of course.
Well, supposedly she's selling them off into the international slave trade, right? Kind of like a Rambo Last Blood situation.
Yeah, that's what... I'm not sure who Shake's informants are, but he finds that out, and that's when he tells Castle. But yeah.
That is an underdeveloped part of the script for Shakes.
Yeah. So what do you think was her plan? Because she later kills these guys in a very interesting way.
Somehow Lady Tanaka had all those Caucasians in that room on her payroll. That was great. Yeah. The way they all stood up with the guns.
What do you think? What was her plan for actually running this thing? She killed off all her underlings.
So I also had trouble from just a basic sense of watching the movie where her headquarters was. Because it looks like there's this giant building with mostly glass windows. And there's one scene where it belongs to Franco, where all the mobsters are meeting in the top room and she visits. But it looks like she also has her own building that looks just the same. And I feel like they were using the same building for both of these scenes somehow.
They probably were.
Oh, that was odd. But she has her own tower. She has an international empire. She has a daughter who I don't believe is ever named in the movie. Or even in the credits.
And I'm not convinced her daughter is Japanese, by the way.
It's supposed to be half and half. They have a line of dialogue in there.
Okay, I missed that part. But she's blonde, isn't she?
It would have made sense if they'd explained what happened to the father of the daughter. Because they talk about her killing her brother off as a loyalty pledge. But it would have made more sense if they'd also talked about... Because you feel like she's really loyal to the daughter. I don't think the daughter ever speaks in the movie either. It's an odd... She's there, but why is she there? She's really good with her... she does all the stunt works, but again, why? I don't know.
Yeah, she's got blades everywhere, man.
That was very clever. The shoes and everything, they just pop out, and she's cutting Dolph up. That's great.
Yeah. So Shakes gets bad intel on where the kids are being held.
Mm-hmm.
And Puncher goes to the Joker's theme park.
Yep.
And
they use that on the DVD menu. You catch that?
I did. It's that DVD menu is so blurry. I think that's where they capture Punisher. And you have the scene where all these ninjas are going down these slip and slide type things.
Oh, goodness. It was Batman. It was something out of a Batman movie there.
This movie, a lot of this movie, you take the Batman television show with Adam West and Burt Ward, and you make it R-rated.
Yeah.
A lot of the fight scenes resemble that. But remember, like the boat scene where the two sides were fighting each other? You just needed some pows and some bams to be flashed on the screen there.
That's true. Every time they drop an F-bomb, you could put a onomatopoeia on the screen.
So I believe that's the point they captured the Punisher.
You know, it was the daughter because he was riding his motorcycle on the catwalk, and she threw something into the wheel.
She threw a chain, and the chain caught up in the wheel, and it flipped him off, and that's where they beat the crap out of him.
No helmet.
Nope. So they got Shakes too, and that's where they do the stretching scene. And he basically uses his hand to undo a wingnut while they're looking at him. Not the brightest people in the world.
You would have thought they could have foreseen that as a problem.
Yeah. So the people that were torturing him, he got the intel from them where the children are being kept.
Mm-hmm.
And then he takes a bus and goes rescues most of them.
And that's where they were going to do the handoff on the slave traders, I think.
Yeah. But one kid doesn't get out, Tommy Franco, who's taken away to the Yakuza headquarters.
He tried to help save the other little girl.
He went back for her dolly. Idiot. So then there's a nice bus scene where they're chasing the bus. I think I mentioned he had a bus. So he gets the kids on the bus. They're chasing him. Quite a few bullets should have killed him.
Yeah.
As you can see, the bullet hole in the windshield literally in front of him. So
somehow one of the Yakuza goons gets on the bus near the back, and they just runs up and tries to fight Frank. I didn't understand that. That was odd logic.
No, there was a lot of logical strangeness in this scene. And I will say, these guys, they shoot like stormtroopers. Like, 1,000 bullets probably missed Frank in this movie.
They didn't even try for the tires.
No. Well, they didn't want to kill the kids, obviously. That's the money.
Okay.
So one of the goons jumps on the side of the bus, and he's got his fingers on an open window.
Oh,
and then these little children come in, they pry his fingers off, and the guy gets run over by a bus. So you could say the kids took out one.
So I like the fact that he got run over. It would have been so much more effective if one of the kids had a hammer or something they had picked up on the way out. It's an R-rated movie. Give me more than little children casually banging away at a bad guy's fingertips. Give me a hammer.
I would have liked, and I don't know if this would work in real life, but I would like some kind of like hand crank to close the window.
Ooh. I mean, it's okay. In my opinion, this movie's R-rated, and it earns it, but I feel like it pulls a lot of punches on the violence.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't know if I'll let my kids watch this one, but it's really more because my older kids, I should say. The opening montage makes it R-rated by default. And you get these flashing, blurry pictures coming in that are not from the movie, as far as I can tell. And there's a little bit of nudity there. And you're thinking, okay, what kind of movie is this going to be? And there's basically nothing sexual in the entire movie.
Other than the back end of Dolph Lundgren. That's it.
And then he basically got F-bombs, but nothing crazy on the violence. There's blood, don't get me wrong. But nothing like, you don't get decapitations or anything.
It feels a little bit like this movie took inspiration from the original RoboCop, but did not lean into the R rating near as much as that one did on the kills.
If you took out RoboCop and you dropped John Rambo into that universe.
All right.
Okay, so eventually the police intercept the bus and they arrest Frank and the children get loose, or freed, I should say. And then they take him in this van.
They got to transfer him after they interrogate him in the original cell. He's going to the next place, yeah. So
I'm going to skip the interrogation for a second, so I'm going to lose my thought. So they're transporting him for sentencing or for court. Very quick process, by the way. And he's still in his original clothes.
Yeah.
He's like carrying his own jacket. And he's got his hands in front of him, not behind him. It's just like, goodness.
That's Berkowitz's doing. He didn't want to. He is a former cop. They're giving him a little special privileges there.
He resigned.
He was killed, though. Well,
I think we're talking about two different characters.
Oh, okay, sorry. You're talking about Berkowitz. Yes, Berkowitz, there's a line of dialogue that he resigned after the interrogation, and Sam Leary delivers that line.
Yeah, because she basically says, "You've broken your friend's heart."
Do you know how long a man can live?
A long time.
A long time. As he's holding the... Does he hold a gun while he says that? Or
No, he's still arrested. He's not loose. So we should back up. We find out that he was Frank's old partner.
Louis Gossett. Okay. Yeah, Berkowitz.
So yes. Berkowitz had been Frank's partner, and Frank had helped him pull himself out of alcoholism and became the cop that he used to be. And so he didn't give up on him, so he doesn't want to give up on Frank. And that's why his heart's broken when Frank says, "Leave me alone. I am who I am. Frank's dead." So unbeknownst to us, Franco kidnaps Berkowitz.
Yes. It's very much like that scene in The Dark Knight where he just sends all the vehicles in the way of the transport vehicle.
Yes. And I don't know if he got kidnapped at the same time.
There's a deleted scene where he's at home. In the deleted scene, because Sam Leary has been knocked out and they've knocked over the police van. And when Berkowitz goes to visit Sam Leary in the hospital, as he leaves and gets in his own old car, somebody is in the back of the car with a pistol. Thus, he is apprehended at that moment. But this movie skips over that.
Gotcha. So Franco breaks Frank out of custody so he can use him to save his son. He tells him to basically F off. He says, "Well, if you're going to do it the hard way," and he pulls out Berkowitz and say, "If you're not, I'm going to kill this guy, your old friend, your old buddy, your old pal. If you don't save my kid." Frank says, "Okay, but I'm going to kill you when I'm done."
I like that. "When this is over, you're dead." Is that what he says?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
So Berkowitz doesn't say kidnapped very long. Let me find my notes.
He needs to take a leak.
Yeah, so he's got to go to the bathroom. And the guy says no. He's like, "Well, what do you think your boss is going to say when there's a yellow stain on the seat?" So he begrudgingly says, "Okay," and he gets him by gunpoint. He's got his hands behind his back. He says, "Are you going to handle the equipment?"
This is the high point of Louis Gossett Jr. acting career right here. I've never seen Raisin in the Sun or anything else, but it can't get better than that.
So he starts to uncuff him, and he uncuffs him, so to put his hands in the front. As he starts to cuff his hands in the front, he says, "So they don't require an IQ test for the job, do they?" He says, "Nope." Didn't think so.
First he said, "Can I ask you a question?" Yeah. He's like getting a cigarette while he's doing it one-handed or whatever. He's got the gun in one hand. Again, all while they're waiting for pizza.
Yeah. And I will say, if you got a dumb thug, that is some dialogue that might get you somewhere.
You got to remember, the mobsters are bottom of the barrel here. Their best people have already been taken out.
Yeah, because I don't think the 125 even includes the lower people. So then they kind of cut to a scene. Well, we'll skip to it even if it's not, where you have Frank and you have Franco, and they're getting ready to go bust into the facilities. And they have Shakes out there. And he gives Shakes a little trigger thingy and a gun.
He gets one job.
Well, two jobs. And he gets to push the first button at 5 minutes. He pushes the other button at 15 minutes.
And he screws it up.
Yeah. And so he's sitting there reading a magazine or a newspaper, and he knocks the little trigger down into the sewer below. It's probably about 18 inches down in there. So he ultimately, you don't want to disappoint Frank Castle on a mission, just clear. So he uses one of the Punisher's knives, which I'm not sure where this knife came from because they handed him a gun. So he ends up having to push the first button with the point of the knife through the sewer to cut off the lights. And then ultimately, to get the second button, he just shoots the thing. And it works.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would work.
Did it work because the bullet pressed the button, or because if it self-destructs, it sets off the bomb?
Unclear. I think they just wanted to give Shakes a gun and shoot like Barney Fife.
Oh, man. Can you imagine that guy's aim with his hand?
Yeah.
Man.
Well, yeah. So
reminds me of some guy came into Sunday school once, couldn't hold his hot chocolate. I was following him with a mop, and he left his bag of white powder on the ground afterwards.
So they raid the headquarters. There's some really good fight scenes. They did not use stunt people for this. They actually had a couple of Japanese champions of whatever.
Karate. There's a genuine karate, and because Dolph Lundgren is a karate champion as well in his backstory.
Yeah, so they had some really cool fight scenes.
Apparently not choreographed either. They just let a lot of these guys figure it out on their own.
And apparently one of them, and neither of them spoke English, so they had translators. One of them was crying because he didn't want to get killed at the end of the scene and lose all his honor. It's like, dude, it's fake.
Oh, no. Did they put a mask on him? Was that how he kept his honor?
No, I heard Dolph did an interview in like 2017. He was talking about it. But
I like the red effect, the Virtual Boy style.
Yeah. So they knocked the lights out, and then you had basically the emergency lights pop back on.
And you have the Japanese walls, the little, I forget what they call them, the bamboo walls with the, it's a good visual for an 80s movie like this.
And then eventually Castle gets in the fight with the daughter of the, and she didn't have a name, did she?
Not in the credits. Nobody said it. There's something on Wikipedia, but I don't understand where they got it from, unless it's a script or something from deleted scenes.
Well, they did make a graphic novel years later.
Yeah.
But they have a nice fight. Like I said, it's very impressive fighting to the girl. I don't know if she actually was trained or not.
He has to snap her neck, like Henry Cavill Superman.
Yeah. Then they get to Lady Tanaka. Oh, wait, okay. So first off, all right. So it wasn't Punisher yet. Franco confronts Lady Tanaka. And this awkward scene where they got their guns pointing at each other. And he says, if you kill my kid, I'm going to kill you. She says, well, you'll be losing more than me.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, there's a sense that that's true. But she would be dead. So she would lose everything. So I'm not sure that quite landed the way it should have.
No, I bought it, though, because she played the gambit that even if he killed her, he loses. But if she could convince him not to do it, on the chance that his son would survive, then she would win. So yeah, the odds are she could win, but he's going to lose either way.
So then she says, if you want your son to live, you have to trust me, ha ha ha. Take the gun and put it deep in your mouth and pull the trigger.
So sadistic.
And they linger on the camera, so they make you wonder, like, is it going to happen? But no. Frank busts through, throws I think it was a knife into her forehead.
Yes.
And she dies. And Franco is reunited with his son. Punisher's laying on the ground exhausted and wounded.
He's been sliced up pretty good.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a chance to go to the sewer and heat up his knives to causerize his own wounds yet. That's a good scene we skipped over.
Yeah. And then he tells Tommy to go wait outside for a minute.
Oh.
And then he starts to kill Punisher, but then Tommy comes back in and says, hey, Dad. Who we should also note, earlier in the movie, it is determined, or it's exposed, that Tommy, of all the gangster children, is the only one not to know or to realize that his parent is a mobster.
Irony. Character arc.
And then, so that distracts him. They get into a little tussle. A tussle which they went back and reshot because audiences did not like the brief nature of the first one that they filmed.
It's a good tussle.
Well, they had 2 tries at it. And actually set up like a duplicate set, like someone's house. But anyways, they have a nice little tussle. At some point, Castle shoots him with, I guess, the bullet that went through the armor. So he was wearing armor.
Well, do you remember in Batman Begins when Lucius Fox is fitting Bruce with the armor? And Bruce Wayne says, can it stop a bullet? And Lucius says, anything but a straight shot. Straight shot. Right in the gut. Yeah. So there you go.
But anyways, he dies. And then
Tommy, the real drama begins.
Yeah. So Tommy grabs his gun.
We should mention Dolph drops the gun in this cut. In the original one, he still had the gun in hand.
Yeah. So then the kid gets the gun. Castle says maybe it's better if he's get it over with now, and you won't have to grow up to be like him. And he kneels in front of the kid, puts the gun on his own forehead, and tells the kid to do it repeatedly. Do it. Do it. Kid's breaking down. He's not a gangster. He's not a mobster. He's soft.
He's a good boy.
Last time he tried to help someone, he got beat up by a chair, you know? So then the kid breaks down and cries. Punisher consoles him. Says, "You're a good boy, Tommy. Grow up to be a good man. Because if not, I'll be waiting."
That is a worthy line. You could have ended a Batman animated series episode with that. That was pretty good.
I kind of wish. So Dolph's little thing at the end, where he's in his little Rambo Ninja Turtle cave, those words were good. But if they had ended the movie and that was the last of the dialogue, it would have been fine.
Like RoboCop, he just walks out with that last line.
Yeah.
But that was good. To just cut straight to the credits on music with that. The music's not great in this. Do you have anything to say about the music or the score?
So apparently, and I guess it's part of the movie, but they did not release a soundtrack for this, or at least the full score, until 2005.
Missed that one.
Yeah, so a full orchestral score was composed and conducted by Dennis Dreith at the Warner Brothers Soundstage in Burbank, California. A CD of the soundtrack was not released until July 9, 2005 by Perseverance Records. The CD includes a complete multi-track stereo recording and a 22-minute interview with the composer and the director. They released a new 5.1 mix as a super audio CD in collaboration with Tarantula Records. The American DVD release only contains a monorail soundtrack, though the film has Dolby Stereo. The 2013 German and UK Blu-ray were presented in 2.0 and 5.1. I found the music kind of odd. I noticed the sound effect kind of stuff between scenes more than anything.
I feel like those are two reasons why everybody loves RoboCop and forgets about Punisher. Number one is because when they got violent in RoboCop. And number two, that RoboCop theme song was top tier. And Punisher just doesn't have that.
I will also say that this movie didn't get a U.S. release theater-wise either.
Really? Huh.
No. We talked about this.
How? Well, yeah, I know you mentioned it opened in Germany first, but I thought for sure it opened in America.
It had a worldwide theatrical release except in the United States, Sweden, and South Africa.
Boy, what a heartbreaker.
It's because of the financial problems of New World.
I guess that's why nobody remembers it, because you had to rent the video and think it was just some weird thing.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people did rent the video, because like I said, despite it did not release in the U.S., it made $30 million on a $9 million budget.
So the only Marvel theatrical movie we got was Howard the Duck in the 80s. Up until Blade, I guess.
It got a theatrical release, it's not here.
Not here, though. No domestic total. No domestic.
New World's financial difficulties and the new owners did not have an interest in theatrical distribution. I think it would have made a lot of money, even without the skull. And like I said, if they released it a couple years later, like whoever owned the rights to this movie should have released this in the U.S. in 91. Or 92.
Orion should have bought it. Be a double feature with Terminator 2.
But yeah, and then it's kind of got a cult following since then, kind of like Howard the Duck in some ways.
For different reasons.
Yeah, same audience, probably.
Maybe.
People who have read the Punisher comic tend to like the movie. People who don't like the Punisher comic are not going to like this movie.
Unless they're Dolph Lundgren fans.
Well, those people are going to like the Punisher comics.
My interest is more for Lundgren than the source material, because I've yet to watch the other Lionsgate Punisher movies. I
watched part of one of them when it came out, one of it, Travolta.
Yeah.
I can't decide what I think of John Travolta. He's
not Nicolas the Punisher, Cage. He's the villain, right?
Correct. Oh, yeah. I like this movie. I give it 3.5 out of 5 skulls.
Yeah, I was on the fence. I can't give it 4, and part of that is just some of the characters feel useless. Some of the plot threads don't feel like they go anywhere. But I struggled on 3 and 3.5, and I think I'm going to go 3.5 because of the quotability. Those one-liners.
I'm curious as to why they needed to cut out certain of those scenes, which I'll be interested to try to find and watch, even if they're lower quality in the future, fleshing things out. I don't know that I don't know that they were necessary.
No, they're not. They can be explained. That's the struggle with a movie like this. a movie like this is better the more it moves along.
Well, I think my my Riverside feed is having an issue, so we should probably wrap up so we don't have to re-record too much. You have closing thoughts on the Punisher though?
They don't have the Punisher TV show on Netflix, do they? Or
I think they
or
do.
Disney Plus.
They do.
I don't know. I guess I'll have to watch Loki first since I've trying to figure out which of those shows I want to get into.
I enjoyed the Netflix Marvel shows. I didn't watch the Punisher, even though he was the one I was most interested in, just because my wife had no interest at all, like negative interest. I might have had to pay her.
He's a family man, Frank Castle.
So I just never took the time to watch it. But it's supposed to be really good. And this movie is, I don't know if it's better than I remember, but it doesn't ruin a nice memory that I had that I was pretty confident I enjoyed it earlier.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. I give it the thumbs up.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And join us next time. We haven't talked about what we're going to record, so we'll find out later. We'll find out with you.
Bye-bye.